First things first, I want to thank everyone that's joined the webinar so far. My name is Rob Catalano with WorkTango, and we conduct these conversations quite regularly in things on the mind of HR leaders and business leaders when it comes to the workplace. So that being said, I wanted to introduce our speakers. What was interesting, when no one's ever really done this before, but usually I use this slide to introduce the speakers, myself and Joel. And what Joel did is he actually gave us our deck and he had his own slides. And what I loved was this was the slide he had for me. I didn't change it at all. I left the word placeholder in there. I actually was interviewed once by Joel for his podcast, and I don't know where he found that picture. Apparently I talked a lot about liking guitar, and I used to play in a metal band, so he threw some Metallica in there. So I thought I would just keep it and be real about the introductions. But if anyone doesn't know who I am, my name is Rob Catalano. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer for WorkTango. I spent the last 17 years helping organizations with building a better employee experience through consulting or building technology companies. And it's something I'm super passionate about and why we sit here at least once a month to talk to other leaders in the space and hear what they're doing when it comes to influencing that workplace. So I'm very excited to be here, but more excited to bring on our main speaker today, which is Joel. Joel, you had this wonderful slide here. I could read it, but I'm just going to have you introduce yourself before we dive in. Yeah, the floor is yours.
All right, terrific. Rock on. Thank you, Rob. So everybody, so pleased to meet you virtually, and hope everybody is safe and doing well, most importantly in this time. So I'm Joel Silverstone. I am the founder and director of Silverstone Communications, and you can reach me at joelsilverstone.com. And what that means is for over 20 years, I've been focused on communication skills and mindset, and I've been helping leaders and their teams and from Fortune 500 companies really on how to be more engaging through difficult conversations, sales conversations, and presentations and customer service. I'm also, as Rob said, I'm also the podcast host of TFR, This Feels Right, which is a weekly podcast all about how we can influence others without manipulation, really be able to connect to the emotion and also speak to the logic. I'm also, and you're going to be seeing through this webinar, bringing some of these Hollywood tips. I'm a former professional actor. You might remember me, and you see my picture down there with the lights behind me as my 6.5-minute claim to fame on the X-Files. I think I'm celebrating my 25-year anniversary when I shot those 6.5 minutes. And I also have a background in improvisation. And finally, jumping over fires. If I'm not doing this kind of stuff or looking after my kids, I am in training to jump over fires. So with Spartan obstacle course races. So I definitely believe in practice is so important, how to deal with resilience and how to deal with change. And we're going to be doing some Hollywood tips through this.
I'm amazed that you are a professional actor, 20 years of communication skills, and in the 20 to 30 age group was also one of the world class. So well done, Joel. Very, very impressive resume.
Yeah, not quite the 20 to 30 age group, but a little bit higher than that. Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate that. Before I go to the next slide, I want to make sure that everyone has pen and paper handy as we go through this. If you don't have paper, maybe you've got your stockpiled toilet paper, so bring that out. The most important thing here is I want you to be able to take notes, and we're going to be doing some exercises along the way. I'd love your feedback as we go through this. As Rob said, please feel free to stop me. And most importantly, I want to say we are talking about navigating challenging conversations and influencing the better outcome. We won't be tackling today that's like another webinar, that line in the sand, when someone has crossed that line where it's infringing on workplace policy or disrespect. So it's political or sexual or racial, just something that crosses that line in the sand, so to speak. So we'll be dealing with our day-to-day difficult, challenging conversations. So starting with that, I want you to picture this. You are in front of your computer, and you're busy trying to produce an email that's, a very difficult email that's going to go across to the whole organization, and you're trying to find the right words. As you're doing this, you see a message flash across your screen, and it says, hey, listen, I'm really struggling with Chris. Chris is just not getting it. They work really hard, but the program they keep producing or the results they keep producing is just subpar. I don't know what else to do. We need to talk. So right off the bat, as soon as you read that, your your self-talk goes into overdrive. Your cortisol level is 50% higher than normal. You're probably going to fight or flight. This emotion starts to go forward. So have that situation in mind, because this is kind of where we're going about where are you at when the two of you are going to meet and discuss Chris. So let's go to the next slide.
Just one interruption. I feel
Yes.
since I last did the introduction, another 50 people joined up. So just a heads up that if you do have questions, please put them in the questions and Q&A box on the Zoom client. We'll be addressing those. I'm allowed to interrupt Joel to ask any of those questions. So we definitely want this to be interactive. So I already interrupted you. So back to you.
I feel free to interrupt. Again, totally used to it. Maybe say yes and when you want to interrupt me.
All right, done.
All right, so this is where we're going. We're going to talk a little bit of background of what are challenging conversations, as I gave you a little scenario. And then we're going to have something called MOVE. So this is something I use in a lot of ways to communicate. So it's our 4 steps to dialogue. So at the end of this, not only are you going to learn a little bit more about yourself, maybe learn a little bit more about what motivates another person in a challenging conversation, but also have a template on how to get to dialogue. So MOVE stands for mindset. That's going to be focused on our intention. The O is for observing the emotions. The V is for validating the motivators. Why do people get up? What motivates them? And finally, engaging to influence. So this is where we're going to start. From this point forward, every conversation you have is now your opportunity to have a brand new conversation. So I'm going to say this again, because this is key. We're going to start here and we're going to end here. So what this means is that from this point forward, that conversation you're going to have with that manager for tomorrow's example is your opportunity to have a brand new conversation. In other words, there's no assumptions, there's no judgment, there's no past history. You are coming in with a clean slate. And we talked about my Spartan obstacle course racing. A running tip that I always use for myself and how to keep myself motivated is that every run I go out as I train is my opportunity to have a new run. Doesn't matter what happened yesterday. It's a brand new slate. So this is important. We're going to come back to this as we go through the session. So again, the objective today is really having that courage to engage in those challenging conversations. The expertise will be the steps that we go through that. Understanding the motivators for yourself and also for the other person and how that affects those challenging conversations. And at the end, just like influencing, it's about having a mutually beneficial commitment. In other words, it's not about winning, it's about the other person feels respected. You also feel respect for yourself. You haven't demeaned yourself. You also feel good. So it's not about someone winning a battle. It is about mutual beneficial. And as Rob said, he's going to interrupt me. So what that means is this is an opportunity today. There's no bad questions or silly questions. This is we're all in agreement, all of us here in this virtual world, that this is a safe and fun environment. So as we said, pen and paper handy, please. I've got a colored, there we go. I've got a colored marker. So I'm gonna start. Rob, are you ready? Do you have a pencil and paper?
I can only get my hand on a calligraphy pen, but this will do.
Beautiful, great. I'm gonna give everybody 10 seconds, and this is what you're gonna do. I want you to draw something that represents a challenging conversation that you've had. Be creative. There's no right or wrong. I'll give you some quick examples. People have drawn in the past. They're skiing down a mountain and they're being chased by like an avalanche. They feel like they're talking to a brick wall. They feel like there's projectile sweat coming out. There's no right or wrong. Rob's going to do this, but also we'd love to see in the chat what are some of the answers. So let's go. 10 seconds. I'm going to time it and go. 7 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pens down. So I'll let you. Don't try to make it perfect.
All right.
And you got a calligraphy pen, Rob. So as I'm checking with Rob, please feel free to put into the chat what were some of the things that you draw. So Rob, maybe can you show us what you drew?
Yeah, so I did the word and the drawing. I wasn't sure. And it says sciatica. So that's what I feel like when I have to go to a difficult conversation. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yes. Do you actually have a sciatica nerve?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So when when you're going into that, it feels like it's a nerve point that's triggered?
Yeah, it's just uncomfortable and you don't want to be there. And it happened last night pretty bad. So it was, quick to memory. So that's what the first thing came to mind when you asked that question.
Thank you so much, because what you're saying is that it becomes a physical thing as well.
Yeah, or I guess a place you don't want to be, right? I don't want to be in
Yeah,
pain.
yeah, you associate it. Great.
A couple of chats just came in too.
Great. Go
Someone
ahead.
said exploding brain, angry manager, ostrich putting head into sand.
Mm.
I like that, Karen. Um, Same as it ever was, repeated 3 times. Keep asking the same question, never gets answers.
Right.
Sciatica's nagging. I appreciate that, Jennifer. Staring at an angry bear. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Car crash. Two sad people facing away. One is crying, one is throwing up. That's a
Oh.
very vivid
Mm-hmm.
one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more coming in, but I'll end it there.
Yeah. And that's, these are all common. And first off, thank you everybody for sharing the frustration that comes out with these types of conversations. And let's take a look. Whoops, how did I do that?
That was impressive.
Yeah, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go forward again. This is back in time. You might remember. So everything that we're sharing is and this is I borrowed this from Crucial Conversations book, and at the end we'll have some resources of where we got some of this information. So everything we're hearing in some of these descriptions fits into this, which is usually a challenging conversation is these 3 ingredients. The emotions are running strong, opinions vary, and the stakes are high. Let's break that down. So the emotions are running strong. Often there is a backstory. So remember I said at the beginning, this is our opportunity to have a brand new conversation, because this is one of the biggest things that gets in our way. I've asked this person 3 times and I just never get, I get the same answer, right? There's a backstory to that. Or I'm going to deal with this manager that's struggling with Chris and giving feedback. There's a backstory. So that gets in our way. The next one is, oh dear, I'm too fast on this. The next one is that opinions vary, right? So I think we got a lot of that talking to the bear, the sciatica nerve. We've got this clash where the person says, no, I'm right. And the other one says, well, no, I have a different version. So it's not that people are angry. It's more this subtext that is going on, this backstory, this person who feels that they are in the right. And then finally, the stakes are high. And in the HR world, a lot of it's got to do with a career or a bonus or security or reputation. But probably the number one is our ego gets in the way. We don't want to look bad, and we don't want to look stupid, and we want to look like we are in control. So here's the goal of a challenging conversation. Remember I said it's not about winning. It is about getting to a dialogue. And dialogue means it's not about solving the problem, which is so hard for most of us, especially in HR. We want to solve it. We want to figure this out for them. And it's so hard to step on the brakes and not be about solving. But our intention is about getting to dialogue. And dialogue means not a conversation. It means cooperative exchange, that there's this, what they call in Crucial Conversations, they call it shared meaning. In other words, that we are both listening to each other and we get to a place where there's that two-way mutual respect and that we find maybe a common purpose that we're working towards. So here's the Hollywood tip. As an actor, an actor's job is to move the other actor in the scene. If they move that other actor in those small moments, then the scene moves forward. So how do they do it? They have to be, number one, and this is important, they have to be focused in the present, not the end. Even though they know where the story is going, you can't play the end of the story when you're in those moments. Because an actor, as you see with the little screen thing, is they do it take after take after take. They have to keep repeating those moments. So they have to be present in that moment to be able to have an effect on the other actor. They have to listen for the words and the feelings. They can't be thinking about the script or about their lines. If you're just thinking about what you're going to say, you're going to miss what the other person is saying and how it affects you. And then finally, you have to deliver with an intention. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more clear as to what you are trying to get across. And if they don't do this as an actor, the scene falls flat, everyone disengages. The other actor, the audience, it's not believable, it becomes acting. So let's relate this to our world, which is this. is these are the 4 steps we're going to look at dialogue. We're going to look at our mindset. We're going to look at our intentions, our unconscious and our conscious intentions. We're going to look at emotions, observing ours and the other person's emotions, validating the motivators. What do you need? What does the other person need? And then finally, that engaging to influence the outcome. Sorry. All right, so let's go. Mindset starts with intention. So this is the thing. So intentions are different than your outcome. So intentions are a purpose. You can see I got this picture of the person looking ahead as to where they're going. So they have a sense of where they're going, but the intentions are these small moments. So an outcome, for example, might be in HR, the person signs they agree to, they leave. So let me ask you quickly, what else are outcomes when you're in a difficult conversation? So I'll open it up to the chat. What are some outcomes that you're looking for when you are in a challenging conversation? So for example, they sign they agree to, they leave.
Not seeing anything come up yet. I'll find a solution, help them grow. They understand.
Improve performance. Retasking, yeah.
Yeah, that happens often.
Great. So this is good. We got a mixture actually of intentions and outcomes. So let's clarify that. So let's start off with the unconscious intention. So remember I talked about that manager that's going to come talk to you tomorrow about Chris, who just doesn't seem to get it. And now you have to talk to Chris. And you're unconsciously intention. It could be an anger, it could be resentment, it could be frustration. I'll give you another example. You're preparing for a conversation with someone who challenges you or you find frustrating. So your unconscious intention right off the bat might be to embarrass that person, to put them in the place rather than help them or get them to a safe dialogue. Now you agreed your outcome was about retasking or about mutual benefit, but this unconscious intention gets in the way. So that influences your language, it influences your conversation. So here's a question to ask yourself as you go into intentions, which is, are you planning to make this person feel bigger or smaller? Are you planning to make this person feel bigger or smaller? And that's the difference between conscious and unconscious intentions. Let me give you some examples now of conscious intentions. Number one, biggest one is, what do I want from this relationship? So someone said like mutual benefit, even just listening as an example. So collaboration, trust could be an example of what I want from this relationship. You can also challenge yourself with this, is to discover the underlying gap, to be curious, which means person's going to come into our conversation tomorrow. Chris is going to come in and maybe I'm not going to look at solving it. My intention is going to be to be curious. Is it skill? Is it will? I'm just going to be curious. And maybe that's the beginning of our conversation. And you'll probably notice that you're going to be a lot calmer if you go in with that intention versus I gotta get Chris on track, or Chris's manager is really going to be on me. Why isn't Chris changing? Let's take a step back and just go, how can I already start to lower that temperature so it doesn't go into a challenging conversation? I like this one: soft on the person, hard on the problem. That's from the book Getting to Yes, which is probably older than my appearance on the X-Files. It's well over 30 years old, but still makes sense. In fact, FBI negotiators use that. And the visual you have for that is that we're not sitting across from each other, that we're kind of literally, I know in this day and age it seems crazy, we're actually sitting side by side and looking at this problem together. So even if you're in a virtual world, have that visual that we are sitting side by side and we are looking at this problem together. So soft on the person, being empathetic towards them, not being hard on them, and soft on the problem, which is often what happens. We sugarcoat the problem and we're hard on the person. And then finally, again, how do you want them to feel at the end of the session? Bigger or smaller? So let's pause here for a self-reflection exercise. I'd like you to think now of someone you are dealing with right now. Maybe it's a past or maybe it's a future situation that is with a challenging person. So maybe this is the conversation you should have had, or it's a conversation you're going to have tomorrow or today. So what is one intention that you could seek? And I'll go back to that slide of the intention. and what's a goal or outcome that you could seek. All right, so let's go back. Oops. How do I go back, Rob? There we go. So those are the intentions. So what's an intention that you could seek, and what's an outcome that you could seek? So that you get that off your plate.
So just for clarity, these are all intentions on the screen.
These are all the intentions, that's right.
And then we're now trying to understand the outcomes that we believe we want at the end of the day, correct?
Yeah, it's a combo. So first, what's an intention? So maybe my intention is to be curious, with Chris as an example. The outcome obviously is that Chris gets it and is actually makes the changes in how they do their work.
Okay.
So an often outcome is, Chris changes, the person changes, but we're so focused on changing that person that we miss those small moments that we could really lower the temperature. All right, let's go on. I want to bring in a little bit of emotional intelligence here because this can also help in how we get to those dialogue. Again, emotional intelligence is that ability to identify and manage your emotions, but also to be able to identify and manage the other person's emotions as well. When they look at top performers, 9% of them are rated high in emotional intelligence. I know a lot of you in HR, you know a lot of this about EQ, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the background on this. And we know that nowadays, EQ is a priority over IQ because how do people deal with stress? And we see our picture of Kramer here. So here's some of the things about self-awareness. What is my self-talk? What are my triggers, my values and beliefs, and ability to separate facts from myths? So let's go to self-talk here. Self-talk gets in our way. So if we are thinking at about 450 words per minute, and we could say 150 words per minute, this is the math, that we've got 300 words of self-talk filler. And sure, we've got our positive self-talk, which is dag nabbit, I'm going to be in control and I'm going to breathe and I've got this. But there's so much of our self-talk that is unconscious, and that unconscious part is often negative and judgmental. It protects us. It's the story that we tell ourselves when we are threatened, disappointed, at risk. And there's three classic stories that we tell ourselves with self-talk. There's the victim, which is well, I've done everything for Chris, and I can't believe that this is how they treat me. Well, that's the victim. The villain, Chris is just so obnoxious. There's just no point in dealing with Chris. They're just so obnoxious and self-centered. Or helpless, which is, well, I don't know what else to do. I've done everything possible. So those are often the three unconscious stories we tell ourselves, and now it's actually building our awareness to be conscious of which story we might be telling ourselves. Oh boy, we went ahead. Let me just go back a little bit here. Okay, and then the other thing here is values and beliefs. So these are all the emotional intelligence things that get in our way. So let me ask you this, what are your values and beliefs? So Rob, take a look at this list. As I'm saying this, I'd love to think what your values or beliefs are. So mine, for example, is humor. That's so important for me that if someone doesn't have a sense of humor, I don't quite connect with them. So I struggle with people who are the opposite, where they might be, let's say, spirituality. Sometimes they don't always have a sense of humor. But often in the real world, for example, yours might be competency. It's really important, get it right. Everything is crossed off, everything's handed in ahead of time. You exceed expectations. And that other person that Chris, as an example, doesn't seem to get it, theirs might be about creativity. So it's often an opposite, someone who's competency and creativity. So to be able to understand what your values and beliefs are, and to be understand maybe what fuels the other person, can help you get to dialogue. Rob, where do you think you fit into that?
I mean, yeah, personally, I'm more on the loyalty side of things, the humor side of things, and compassion. But I guess a question, I guess regardless of what you are, how do you, I guess you fundamentally have to know where the other person sits, right?
Yes.
And you might have that because there's an interaction, you have them in the office or in personal life, but how do you go about this when you do you assume, do you ask what's important to them? Like, how would you understand their values, beliefs, or their mindset?
Well, it's number one. This is why self-awareness. It's you got to be sure your own, because so that you know where you stand. So it starts with you. Second, Rob, like I didn't really know you, but even just the clues and cues that you gave me from just writing your email, where you were a bit more casual, you'd say, "Hey, Joel," or you say, "Super excited." I go, "Okay." So the best way to communicate with this person is really to be authentic. Authenticity is important to this person. And a sense of humor is really important to this person. And so that's why, off the bat, I really connected with you as well. Those are a lot of my same values. I recognize that. So it's important to also, okay, if those are important to you, then I should communicate to you so that you will also feel more connected to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the way I'm taking this in is like, there's my mindset and self-awareness, but a bit of let's open the blinders to see what, the other person's kind of mindset would be or should be, or do I have any history on that, or picking up on those cues, right? Because I never would thought to just read an email and think about, what that person's mindset could be. But I think being self-aware of that, I think is an interesting approach that I can take.
Yeah, it's so important, because how someone speaks or the words that they choose, and you can get it's being really hyper aware of what seems to be important to them. Is it competency? Is it responsibility? What do they talk about?
Okay.
So good question. So now let's go to, now I talked about fact and separating myths. So I just want to be conscious of our time and allow time for questions as well. So I'll just say quickly about facts or myth, and we sort of took that slide out. The important thing is that we often tend to make myths our facts. So a story, so an opinion. So Rob, you're going to work on a project, and I'm telling you, oh, Rob, on your team, there's going to be, Jessica, she's great. You're going to love her. She, super, super efficient. And also Janet, just to let you know, Janet can't be trusted. Bill is also on your team. Great sense of humor. All I'm telling you are all opinions.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you don't question those or ask a little bit more, then that the myth starts to become fact. So when we're in a challenging conversation, how we communicate, like, Rob, next time you go out there, I need you to be more confident. Well, that's an opinion. Give a fact around that. It's okay to have an opinion. You need to be more confident with or by doing. So giving a fact to support that, so that we don't raise the temperature, which takes us now into observe the emotions.
I'm going to interrupt just with
Yes, of
two
course.
quick questions, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
There was one earlier on that said, I'm interested in if this will cover differences between extroverts and introverts. So if I'm an introvert that need to think before I speak, and I'm not sure if that lays into one of these 4 items or topics at all, or you'll get to it later. Just not sure if you want to address it now or later.
Yeah, I definitely can. That kind of goes back to the values and the beliefs. I would talk about, social styles, which is, let's say I'm more the I'm not, but let's say I was the analytical person, which means I think before I speak, and I'm speaking to someone who's more of a controller, really extroverted and really, really huge. You do have to find a middle ground. You can't stay in your world. The one thing about challenging conversations, I always say, is that somebody has to be the adult in the relationship. So by you being more heightened aware of, okay, I know that I'm an introvert. I know this person is an extrovert. And if we are going to connect, if we are going to get to that place of dialogue, then I'm going to have to try a little bit harder. I don't have to all of a sudden change my personality, but I'm going to try a little bit harder to express more of my thoughts, maybe speak a little bit faster, because people who are introverted tend to speak a little bit slower. So now I'm going to speak a little bit faster. And vice versa. If I'm an extrovert and I'm speaking to an introvert, I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to allow some more pauses. And I'm going to make sure that the person has some time to process the information.
Yeah. And actually, a good follow-up to that just came in a minute ago was, I can see that would be easy, that concept of recognizing the traits of someone else if they're similar to yourself, but how do you interpret traits that are different from your own? Like, is it just being aware of, the different personalities or values people could have? Like, any thoughts or recommendations on Katie's question?
Yeah, it's hopefully, after this session, you now all of a sudden sort of even watching a movie or having a conversation with someone, you all of a sudden start to become really aware. This is my Hollywood tip. My Hollywood tip is that when you're watching a movie or TV show, things are written on purpose. So in looking at a script, you're looking at the intention of the character. Why is this character saying this? What's the motivation behind that? So it's the same thing in real life, to look how to look for those clues and clues. Okay, someone just said homeschooling is really important to me while we're going through this COVID outbreak. Okay, I don't have kids. I can't maybe relate to that, but I'm hearing that responsibility is super duper important to that person. I don't get hung up on, oh, they might not always be available. This is a drag. I get hung up, okay, responsibility is important. So I want to be able to communicate that from the get-go and say, you know, congrats. It sounds like, making sure that taking care of your kids and that routine goes on is important to you. And if they feel recognized, it's going to feel so much more easier to be able to connect with them.
Great. Yeah, thanks for letting me ask those there. It was just felt like good timing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about emotions, because this kind of goes in, which is emotions. This is a crazy slide, but I love this slide. In fact, this slide, as you can see, we got so many different emotions. And I was doing this course in Europe a few months ago, and someone screams at me and goes, what is this? Frustrated. This is the stupidest. This is typical American bullshit. He screams at me. Now, what he was actually angry about or upset about was that English not being his first language, he saw this as all of a sudden he's now got to learn like 200 new terms. That was the underlying issue around that. So this is not about learning 200 new terms. This is realizing that there's an intensity of feelings. So the takeaway from this slide is that, starting with myself, as I'm going into this challenging conversation, if I'm looking at the angry side, am I really angry? Am I really furious? Or am I at the lower end? Am I annoyed? Am I resistant? And so realizing where you're at and go, hi, I'm not at a 10. I'm actually really only at a 3. Or if I'm really going into that session and this person really just intimidates me. So am I terrified, or am I in the middle? Am I apprehensive? Am I uneasy? Am I intimidated? So looking at that temperature already can help calm yourself down, that I'm not as upset as I think I was, or I'm not as anxious as I thought I was, on a scale of 1 to 10. Same thing with the other person. With this other person coming in, realizing that they've had some time to get ready for this session that maybe you're going to have with them. Where are they at on the scale? And your goal in this is, can I lower the temperature? So if someone's coming in and they are the high end of angry, maybe they're upset or they're irate, my goal will be, can I get them down to annoyed? I'm not going to, because often what we do is we're trying to get them from angry and we say, okay, relax, calm down. And all that does is now that you push them up higher on the ladder. So my goal will be, what can I do to lower the temperature? And if they're already at the low end of the scale, what can I do to maybe move them over to that happy side, the low end of the happy side, to be maybe pleased or contented? So that's your goal with emotions, is know where I'm at, scale of 1 to 10, and with the other person, how can I maybe just lower the temperature or maybe move them over?
It's an interesting concept, right? Because you think about solving everything right away, but if you are in that example of being the adult or bringing up the conversation, like, they don't have to be ecstatic. Like, they might have to be just contented with what the outcome of that conversation is. So I never looked at it in this way or approach it like this, but it'd be interesting to kind of gauge that in my mind, where my emotions out of that person is, based on that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Thank you. Because myself included, we're uncomfortable in challenging conversations. It doesn't feel good. It feels like I say sciatica nerve is hitting us. So we want to get to the good thing fast. We want to get to everybody's smiling and laughing, and and we're happy. But let's be realistic. We probably can't get there. But if we can get them lower to dialogue, or get them over to maybe even just mellow, that's a huge success, because we want to get to that safe place of dialogue.
Not gonna lie, I know a few people that go to 0 to 10, like, and I've never seen the middle, so that one's tough to figure out.
Well, they do, but and you know, and if they go to 0 to 10 pretty fast, then you could probably get them. You probably can get them lower to the middle now that you're more aware that there's a middle, and you're not trying to get them back down to 0.
Yeah,
because you triggered something triggered in them, and it's like you triggered the sciatica nerve. It just triggered, and all of a sudden there's a seething pain.
Stop opening up old wounds there. Like,
sorry. Yeah. Ah! So going back to that person you were struggling with, I'd like you to think of this now. Number one, what does that person do that drives you crazy? So some of you talked a bit before about like talking to the bear, or you keep asking the same questions over and over and get the same answer. So what do they do that drives you crazy? So when you think about that person, how do you feel? And I'll bring that emotion slide back up. And most importantly, how do you imagine the other person is feeling in that situation? So when you think about that person, how do you feel, and how do you think they are feeling? I'll bring the emotions back up so you can sort of see there's a range. And I'll pause here, Rob, if there's any comments or questions.
A couple of questions came up, not on this topic, and I won't publicly record it, tell you what I'm thinking in terms of the individual.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, yeah, not in your because they might be listening.
They're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So what are the things that we can do to manage this when we are at that? Like I said, you know, maybe you went from 0 to 10, or the other person went from 0 to 10. There's 3 things here that we can do. So this is back to our emotional intelligence. Breathing is so important. I'm going to unpack that a little bit further. You know, Rob, as I said before, and everybody, we have to be the adult in the relationship. And so the hardest part is putting your own ego on hold. Often this has nothing to do with you. And so if you're just fighting to keep your chest up, then that's all you're going to be. That's as far as you're going to get. So it doesn't help to put your ego on hold. Putting your ego on hold means to be really focused on how can I take care of myself, and also how can I be now hyper aware of what's going on with this person, with their emotions, and with their values. And then I love this one, self-disclosure, that if you're wrong or unsure, don't try to disguise it. You're not such a great actor. So often, you know, if we made a mistake or we're unsure, we try to hide it, and then it affects our voice and our choice of words, and our body language. And people can read that, you know, even subconsciously or unconsciously read, this doesn't feel right. Something's wrong here. So self-disclosure is something like, you know, this really surprises me. I was not thinking that way. I wasn't really aware of that. Did you have a comment, Rob?
I'm smiling because I saw a comment that says ego on hold, and it says Q-tip. Q-tip is an acronym for quit taking it personally. I've never seen that before. I like that.
Writing it down. That's great. Thank you so much. Love that. Absolutely. And then, yeah, so let's talk about breathing a little bit. What we don't realize is that our brain requires so much of our oxygen. It's like 20%. So you really need to flood your brain with oxygen before you go into that. Those shallow breaths, because we've been building this up, getting ourselves ready for that challenging conversation, and we're not breathing properly. It's depriving your ability to think straight. It's your choice of words, your emotions, your mood swings. So we need to do this. Let's do a quick breathing exercise. Rob, are you ready to join me on this?
I'm in.
Okay, great. We're going to breathe in a second for 3 through your nose, and we're going to exhale for 5 through your mouth, like you're whistling. So everybody out there, drop everything that you're doing, and we're just going to take a little breathing break right here. So here we go. We're going to breathe in through our nose for 3. Here we go. And exhale through our mouth for 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do it one more time. Let's breathe in for 3 through our nose. 3, 2, and hold it, hold it, hold it. And now exhale for 5 through your mouth. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. As you'll see, it has a huge effect on the voice. My voice has come down a lot. So when you speak from this place, it sounds just a lot more confident and a lot more reassuring for the other person if your voice is under control. And if you stop speaking from shallow breaths, the voice will reflect that. And again, that goes a long way to be able to lower your own temperature, but also lower the other person's temperature. So Rob, get ready, because here we go to our Hollywood tip.
All right.
So this is, if anyone here has done any improv exercises, you might be very familiar with, there's two rules of improv. One is yes and the other one is always make the other person look good. So if you're ready, Rob, let's do the yes and exercise. And
I'm not an improver though. Okay, let's do this.
yeah. All right. So let's do this. Let's pretend, Rob, that I'm your colleague at WorkTango, and you and I are going to plan a virtual summit next week. Big hoo-ha virtual summit at WorkTango.
Okay.
So I love your ideas on how you can brainstorm with me on, how we want it to look, feel, think, etc. Just to let you know, the first round, I'm only going to answer with yes, but. All right.
All right.
And then we'll try it again. Here we go. Go ahead.
So I'm thinking of running a virtual conference now that all of our events got canceled that were in person.
Yes, but it's hard to get people engaged virtually.
Yeah, well, I mean, we really have no other choice now that everyone's on lockdown. So we thought this was the best way to bring education and collaboration to our community.
Yes, but it feels like I'm gonna be stuck trying to help people figure this out, how to get onto Zoom and all that. We're just gonna be spending a lot of time trying to figure that out.
Yeah, well, I'm the one that got it set up today, Joel, and all you have to do is show up. So.
Yes, but I know I'm gonna get questions and stuff like that. All right, so let's pause right there. Let's rewind, Rob, and let's go back. And now I'm gonna answer with yes and. Here we go.
All right,
Same
so
thing.
I'm doing
Rewind.
a virtual conference, and I'm because of all the things going on with COVID-19.
Yes, and that is absolutely timely and brilliant, Rob. Let's figure this out and maybe how to get people jazzed about this.
Yeah, and I think we already had so many speakers for our events that were already in person, so we can count on them or at least reach out to them and probably have some speakers in line pretty quickly.
Yeah, that would really make everybody feel so well taken care of. Okay, let's pause right there. That was great. Rob, how did you feel when I was saying yes, but?
It was just like pulling teeth, like you were not on board. It was, yeah, I just felt like I had to now sell you on something. It was just, we weren't kind of together in a decision or working together. It was kind of a conflict.
And how did you feel with the yes and?
I felt like I can give you all the work because you were excited about this. No, I felt like it was just, you're positive. It was, again, we were part of a team, right? As opposed to the contrary, where we were in conflict.
And so thank you. And again, this is going back to that soft on the person, hard on the problem. The yes and mindset doesn't mean you have to say yes and. It means that before you dismiss the other person, so going to a challenging conversation, before you dismiss them and you already say their emotions are at this, and you've already put them into a parking lot, that if you want to make this a brand new conversation, go in with that yes and mindset. Maybe it's not quite where you want to go or you quite agree, but take that pause to go, how can I be collaborative with this person? And before I give them the yes, but, because yes, but, nobody hears the yes, they just hear the but. And the intention of this exercise is really, how can I make this person look good? If you recall, I said earlier, how do I make this person feel bigger, not smaller?
This question came up, and I think you might have answered it, but it was any
Okay.
specific strategies for breaking through to people who are very defensible by nature? And these might have been the strategies, or not sure if those work, or anything else you want to add, Joel?
Yeah, well, right off the bat, defensible means that without knowing the whole history, but if and I've done this many times before, someone's like, oh, what's the point? So my self-talk has gotten in my way. What's the point? This is who they are. So now I'm going to have to work harder on how to make this a brand new conversation, because this person has already made assumptions about me as well. And maybe they think I'm the reason that's triggering their defensiveness. So what is important to this person? So I got to step back and come in with a new approach, which is what is important to this person? What are their values? I know I was doing a workshop a few weeks ago, and this older gentleman came in, and right off the bat, he was grumpy and cranky, and he's like, just to let you know, I haven't had my morning coffee yet, so this is not going to be good. And so right off the bat, pigeonholed him. Okay, trouble. This guy, but I said, okay, let's drop that and find out what's important to this person as I go through the session. And of course, this guy, of course, turned out to be the most philanthropic person out of the entire group, and found that he was very much involved with charities, and was just stating where he was at the moment. But because I didn't take it personally, and I also said, I'm going to work hard to really find out what is important to this person and keep them engaged, as opposed to saying, can't help you. So that's the most important thing, I think, to that.
Great, thanks. I just saw Deborah write in, I need to breathe more, LOL. Yeah, Deborah, I think we all do.
Absolutely. So our thing is, again, it's about listening and observing and seeking to understand the other's emotions, as we said. This is the other thing about emotional intelligence, is what's going on with me, but what's going on with the other person. So let's do we're going to do some listening exercises. Are you ready, Rob, for a listening exercise in a minute?
Sorry, what?
Are you ready? Listen, yeah.
I'm ready.
All right, so this is the exercise we're going to do. I'm going to share with you a personal problem. Okay. I want you to try to listen without interrupting and without solving the problem at the end. Do not solve it.
Okay.
All right?
It's a lot of stress, man.
It is. And all I want you to do at the end of this minute, because I'm going to do this for like 30 seconds. I'm not going to do a minute. I'm going to do 30 seconds. All I want you at the end of 30 seconds, Rob, is just tell me, what did you see and hear that was important to me? Okay. What did you see and hear that's important to me? Don't solve it, and you can't ask a question either, because often if you ask a question, you're trying to solve it.
Okay.
All right. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So listen in, and all you have to do is not solve it. What did you see and hear that was important to me? Just tell me what you heard.
Done.
Okay, great. Okay, Rob, we're going to pretend that in this case that COVID-19 hasn't happened. So, we're going into the baseball season, and I've got two boys, very active in the baseball. They play a high level of baseball. That's great. They're outside. They're doing sports. Love it. Problem for me, Rob, what I really find really frustrating is I can't stand those weekend tournaments. I hate going to those towns, and being in a crappy motel with a bunch of teenagers, running around the hotel, and then the parents drinking in the hallway. I mean, that for me, that's my living nightmare. I really can't stand that. I'll pause right there and give you a few seconds to digest that, as to what did you hear and what was important to me.
I thought it was, you don't like going on road trips.
That's right.
Because it disrupts I don't know, maybe you don't like crowds of people. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's tough to, or you're not at home. You're not in your own personal environment.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? You're worried about getting it right, as opposed to trusting your instinct of what you heard. Mm-hmm. I appreciate you trying to just even try to connect with me, because your instinct, you're hardwired to solve it. So it's really hard to be able to just listen without solving and hear what's important, especially if you can't relate.
I'd be like, send your wife. Like, why are you going?
Yeah, exactly. Send your wife, or carpool, or take up drinking. But what I heard is you got the gist of it, which is, yeah, I don't really like crowds. I don't really like being in a crowded situation, away from my sort of controlled environment. I will appreciate that. Versus if you just said, just send your wife. And it's like, no, if you said that to me, I would have said, Rob, you're not getting it. You're not hearing me. So yeah. This is why listening is so important. Listening like you've never heard this person say before. And even a valiant attempt to try to just get what you think is the gist, I'll appreciate that a lot more than if you try to solve it. Here's another listening tip. Next time you're listening, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Did I make them feel heard on a scale of 1 to 10? Did I make them feel understood on a scale of 1 to 10? And here's what I really love. Did I add value, or was I being competitive? Did I add value, or was I being competitive? So Rob, as an example, to be competitive there, you could have said, Oh, yeah. Well, be so thankful that that you do have kids, because we've been trying for years to have kids. I'd love to have that problem. So you're being competitive. I shut down. If you added value, it's because you tried to show me that you were hearing me and you tried to show that you were understanding me. So I'll give you like an 8 on your effort to do that. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I did some psychological safety training, and they talked about just if you're ever in doubt, clarify. Like, don't solve, don't blame. Like, clarify, understand the person from a listening perspective.
Yeah.
And actually, I just saw someone write up a message that said, "When coaching, I have this in front of me. It's in capital letters. Wait, why am I talking?" Kind of a great acronym as well. Joel's writing that one down too. So Joel, I want to be sensitive to time. I know that there's some questions and some other things, 2 other
Yep.
items we need to get to. So I was thinking we go there,
Sure.
and see if there's any other questions we can get to at the end.
Perfect. Let's go through this. Now, this is empathy. Listening and empathy, I think, are the 2 biggest things that are the overused words and underused skill. The good thing about empathy is I'm going to talk to you about, there's actually 3 different levels of empathy. And that helps clarify it, because often we think empathy is, I have to be all in. So number 1 is cognitive empathy, which is just an intellectual exercise. It's just how the ability to understand that a person feels that way. It's got nothing to do with me. I don't share that emotion about going to those weekends with the kids, but that's important to the other person. So that's just simply to acknowledge it. Sounds like that's not your idea of fun, Joel. That's cognitive empathy, period. That's all. Thank you. Emotional empathy is, Rob, you feel it, you share and go, oh my goodness, me too, I'm with you on that one. I hate going to those weekends as well. You actually feel what the other person is feeling. And then the third one is compassion and empathy, and I got the picture of the kitten here, which is, in other words, you don't think, you feel in the pit of your stomach and you immediately want to help. We see the picture of the kitten that's stranded. That's what compassion and empathy is. You want to help. You don't even think twice about it. You see the burning building, you jump in. You don't think about it. That's what it is. So cognitive is, in business, is what we can so easily do, which is listen for the facts and listen for the emotions. If you feel something, you connect with them, great, then have that emotional empathy. And if you are really like, the person saying, I don't know what to do, I'm a single parent and I've got the kids and I can't show up to work tomorrow, then it's like, how can I help? Compassion and empathy. So finally, we go to our last 2 ones here, which is what this person needs, which is the motivators. And kind of like the values, but what does this person need? Do they need recognition, which is probably number 1? We talk about that defensive person. Maybe they just don't get any recognition from anyone. And so they've kind of become their own best friend, and they only rely on themselves. They only trust themselves. Maybe this person needs is some recognition, and it's hard to give them recognition when they are, looking like this. And it's hard to want to say, hey, Joel, when you did a great job with such and such a project when you did this. It's kind of hard to want to give that up. But if that's what's important to them, then that's going to go a long way to creating trust. Or growth is so important. Growth means someone is open maybe to formative or more constructive feedback because they actually want to grow. And then our final one is engaging to influence the outcome. So the reason I have this up is that we can jeopardize when we want to make that final request to get to the outcome. So continue to ask those genuinely curious questions. In other words, frame the question with a context. So Rob, before you go to work tomorrow, and that you feel that you've got everything that you need to be successful in this project, I have a couple questions I want to ask you. So it's framing the question with a context. And to be curious, which means keeping the psychological safety, which is continue that rapport, continue listening to the person, continue to acknowledge that there might be still some resistance. You'll jeopardize the resistance when you ask questions like, don't you think, wouldn't you agree, Rob, that when we ask those questions, it's leading and the other person knows it's leading, and you've jeopardized all that safety. So when you want to make a request, make that request, but test the waters. Maybe give them a few options or a few alternatives so it doesn't feel like they're being told what to do, but it's a request, and go, here, we could do option A, B, or C. Which one feels, at this point, the one that you could tackle? and then continue to explore the other person's story and motivators. Continue that curiosity. We haven't resolved anything. We've just gotten to dialogue. And here's the whole payoff to all this is the neuroscience of it is oxytocin. When you have listened to someone, empathize with them, make clear the intention is not about task related, but it's about maybe it's about growth or building a relationship around trust. They feel cared for, and that's that oxytocin, that love chemical. If they feel cared for, it's that intimacy with that eye contact, that genuine smile, making sure that they feel understood. So if you do that, you are triggering something in them. You've already done half the work. And then dopamine, which is the motivation. This was a good session. You've changed the way I believe that this feedback or this conversation was going to go. I want to speak with you again. I feel safe with you. This was really, really good. It's motivating. So once again, this leads us to the end, which is we started with the beginning. From this point forward, every conversation you have is your opportunity to have a new conversation by putting that mindset with intentions, observing the emotions, validating the motivators, and making sure that you engage to influence the outcome. Means you keep that curiosity going.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, gonna kind of do an audible here. So we still have a lot of folks still on the call. I really appreciate, Joel, the insight there. There's about 4 or 5 questions here and 2 minutes left. If you're comfortable going a little over, happy to, and we're gonna record this and it'll be available if people have to drop off. So I'm gonna start answering some of these questions there.
Thank you.
One was from Laurel. It says, working in HR, sometimes the supervisor is the problem. So I've encountered supervisors that look down on everyone, and that's blended into the conversation with the employee in question. Need to be very careful and look toward the afterlife of the problem. Any ideas?
Yeah. So does that mean that the question is difficult in how to not undermine the supervisor while speaking to the employees?
I don't want to assume. I'm just kind of reading it verbatim. I think it's more careful about looking at the afterlife of the problem in terms of, now it's like, how do you continue to have those conversations? Because it's blended into not just the individual one-on-one, but into that other employee that's in question.
Well, so the supervisor is the person that I have to have that challenging conversation with. And they probably are not aware that that's number one, that this is how they are coming across. So maybe they are coming across, their intentions might be all there. So starting off with what might be their positive intentions. So if the supervisor is the problem, they look down on everyone, maybe it's because their values are about competency, right? And they have they have such a high expectation of themselves, and they're frustrated when people are not at that level. So that might start to be able to recognize that in the supervisor probably doesn't even recognize that in themselves. So helping the supervisor recognize maybe what are their strengths in that sense, and where might be the opportunity and how they can communicate that to their team, I think is a great place to start.
Okay, great. There's 2 questions that are very similar. One, it was very simple, said, how do you convert the persistent resistor to be more open? And then another question is very similar, says, how do you break through to a person that is so stuck in their ways and they feel that their thoughts are more important? And the example that she gave was someone who has a mindset that they don't trust or want to listen to a person who's not as smart as them.
Yeah. And that's, that is a common one. And that this person has basically protected themselves, right? They have a very, they've protected themselves. They've been hurt somewhere along the way, and they figured out a way to protect themselves is to make sure that they are the smartest person in the room. And they have a very, very fixed mindset. So number one, you're going to have to put your own ego on hold. This is the hardest part when someone is like already comes into the room like, does this to you, right? As though you're an idiot. It's important to go, really make them aware that that you do find importance to them, and that you do treasure what their insights and their knowledge to be able to lower their temperature. And that's really how it's going to be. You're not going to solve it in one conversation. It's going to be small pockets of success in earning their trust, and this is going to take a few conversations. And it might be, just a few ones offhand, not so formal, a definitely more informal type of conversation, so they don't feel they're being called into the principal's office, because they're going to already be defensive. So some more informal conversations up the top. Hey, Rob, I noticed you had some great insights on that project. Tell me a bit more about that. Oh, that is great. Yeah, good. And then start re-earning their trust because it is a brand new conversation to the point where now you can start to say, I'd like to talk to away some opportunities that's going to help you get more collaboration from everybody and maybe get everyone up to your speed as well.
Okay, great. There's two questions here. I think we can get through it. I know we're a little late, so like I said, it'll be recorded if people want to see it later. But
Sure.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know what this means. But it says, interested in any ideas for approaching Dunning-Kruger effect. I supervise a person who believes he is very qualified for something that, one, he does not have the master's degree or aptitude for, and number two, it's out of my scope to get them into that position. They want me to help their career path, and
Right.
they don't understand the work they need to put in. Any thoughts?
Yeah, and that's again the person sort of delusional. They don't realize they believe, or someone's told them that they are qualified to do this, and they have believed it. So it's really hard to hear they're not qualified and there's certain work. I would talk about this. Look at this from again, growth is really important to this person, and recognition. So I'd be starting with those motivators as a way to go. That what I understand from this is that that growth is really important to you and you see yourself in this role. Again, and then I would go, tell me what you feel are why this role is important to you. What do you see yourself accomplishing with that role? And the reason I'm asking these questions is I want to see how I could support this journey the best way possible and start with that.
Yeah. I'm not sure who wrote this, but and I don't know what Dunning-Kruger effect is, but one of the things I always leverage in these situations, and because people remember stories more than a yes or a no, but are there any stories that are within that organization that you could lean on? Well, this individual in that role has done X, Y, Z, or at least some comparator to say, and again, there might be this delusion there that I don't need that stuff and that doesn't solve it, but I find sometimes that adds a level of clarity or understanding around what that looks like for an individual there. That's worked for me in a couple of situations with a similar experience as well.
Yeah, paint a picture. That's great.
Yeah. All right, two last ones here before we end. One says, how do you address the power dynamic in a difficult conversation in a work environment where the conflict is with your manager or someone more senior? This may have come up in a couple of the other answers, but not sure if you have another color or something to amplify based on what's already been said.
Yeah, no, I've done a lot of workshops with this where you have to manage upwards, and it's hard because you don't want to cross that line and give difficult feedback. Number one is that you have to break down that barrier that the person has done, that they feel that they're in a manager role, so somehow they are superior, and you have to really find that way to connect with them, that they feel more human. So self-disclosure is really going to be important in this, and it's like, supervisor, I'm really struggling with this, and I'm kind of surprised that I am struggling with this. I love your feedback, and also I'm just figuring out a way that we can also find a way to be able to give each other feedback as well, or thoughts or suggestions, so that we can have that kind of mutual trust. So that's one possibility. And, another way is, again, is that more informal type sessions to get that person to feel more comfortable with you. And then set up a more formal session in a different environment. So don't do it in your office. If you're able to do it in the future, hopefully in the near future, go have a coffee somewhere so that they don't feel you've kind of made it neutral territory, I think is also going to help a lot.
Great. And last question, do you have any suggestions on how to help someone see their insubordinate behavior without being really negative since they may not see it?
Yeah, often that one is, this is going to come as a surprise to you, is often how you start those types of conversations. And also starting with the positive. We've all been there and we've all done something that we didn't realize affected somebody else. And so the best way to handle that is when someone says, you are so good at, Rob, you're so good at, your loyalty and your humor comes across so well. And so what I'm going to say now is probably going to come as a bit of a surprise to you. But when you made that joke with Chris the other day, it didn't land on Chris the way that you might have intended. And I can see by your reaction, you're pretty surprised by that. So I'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, I've never heard that one. That's really good. What I've used in the past too has been it's been more focused on them from a positive perspective where a positive perspective where it's like, listen, I really care about your future at this organization, and this is how this may have been received. Like, so it's kind of identifying the issue or what the concern might have been, because they don't see it, but really with their best interest in mind. I found that's worked for me as well, from an approach perspective.
Yeah, it's good. Tackling each other growth. Yeah.
Great. So there's no other questions. A couple of thank yous to go around. Obviously, the WorkTango team for making sure everything works on the back end. Joel, appreciate spending your time in an hour and sharing these insights and resources. Really appreciate it. To everyone on the call, thank you for the participation, the comments, the questions. It definitely makes more for an interactive conversation versus one person talking to you, and that's what we go for with these. Last things I'll mention is that there's 2 upcoming webinars in April and May, one about helping your leaders become better coaches, and some ideas around HR owning engagement in the organizations. And you can always see those on our website as well. So again, a big thank you to everyone. Have a good rest of the day and week here. I know it's tough times for everyone, and I'm glad we can all connect virtually and have these types of conversations. So everyone have a great rest of the day and week. Take care.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.